I'm Pam.
I'm Tess.
And I'm Kat.
In a world changing faster than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea,
High Tea Mystique reminds you that no experience is too big or too small to teach us something about ourselves.
Join us for a cup of tea as we steep into adulting, womanhood, independence, and more.
Hello, greetings, Earthlings, and our listeners for High Tea Mystiques. We're so happy to be back with you all. Just a little update on all of us. Things have been pretty crazy these past few moments between us getting together to meet, but we're also excited to be here tonight once again. And our topic for you all today is all about motivation. What motivates us, what we've struggled with in the past, how we overcame it, and once you have it, what do you do with it? So, as you all know, our podcast is called High Tea Mystique, which means we always start with a tea that we've decided is relevant to today's topic. And Tess tonight is going to be talking to us about the tea that she's chosen. Take it away, Tess.
All right, thanks, Kat. So tonight we have yogi tea in the flavor of peach detox. Now, some of you may or may not know that peach, while not being a citrus fruit, does contain citric acid. And citric acid is actually a natural stimulant for the mind, and it keeps your mind activated. It increases productivity, which is, no better ingredient for motivation than that. And in this tea specifically, we also have some orange peel mixed with other chai ingredients, a little spice to it. So, more citric acid plus, more spices, more activation coming your way and in our cup. So thank you, Yogi Tea. And without further ado, let's start tonight.
We're not sponsored.
Yet. Awesome. Thank you, Tess. It's a delicious tea too, isn't it, Pam?
Yummy. Especially with those agaves.
Oh, yes, we have a little agave sweetener inside. Yes. Shout out to Publix. Thank you for that. So let's get into the topic, shall we? So again, we're talking about motivation tonight, which means that for our first question, to kind of kick things off, we're going to be talking about what motivates us and where our motivation comes from. So I'm actually going to start this one. And for me, what really, really works well and has seemed to work well, I found a nice groove in, is the way that I speak about myself. I kind of look at myself in three parts. There's my past self, my present self, and my future self. So I like to remember all three of those people that I am, because I find that gratitude is a really, really good tool for keeping myself motivated. I think in the past, I've always struggled with being a people pleaser and wanting to do a lot of things because of having the likeness of someone else, especially if there was someone who I would see all the time. And I didn't give enough love to myself. I wasn't reciprocating those feelings. Mm-hmm. And so developing this relationship with my three parts was really helpful, because I started to thank my past self for little things that I did along the way, especially when you kind of reach a milestone. You say, man, I'm really proud of myself for like that one day just deciding that I could do this, and that I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew it was going to be hard, but I could do it. A great example was when I decided to go back to college. I hadn't been in school for like 2.5 years. And I had this inkling that I wanted to go back, and I wanted to go right into conservatory training, which for anyone who doesn't know is 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. It's an extremely rigorous academic institution. And I just decided on a whim that that's where I needed to be. Wow. And I knew it was going to be challenging, but I knew it was what I needed to do. And I thank my past self all the time, especially the day that I graduated, because I didn't see myself in a place where I could do school full time in the moment that I did it. I just knew I needed to.
That's like super full time too.
Yeah.
Most students are like doing full time and they're still out by like 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, being an artist is really grueling academically. I don't necessarily agree with it now that I've graduated, but when you're in the institution, you feel differently. And maybe we'll talk about that one day, about the different types of education and schooling. Might be a good topic. But tonight we're talking about motivation, my friends. So That's my reference to past self. And what I really appreciate about present self is kind of always just coming back to manifestations or things that I've set for myself, little goals, and yes, of course, I've also been guilty of making a goals list that is a little bit too big, but finding the moments to thank yourself for the goals that you did achieve in that list will always help to motivate you to keep going and still achieve those things that you haven't marked, but you marked them for a reason. You want to get them done. So let's get them done. And then that all helps your future self because you always want to move towards having a better future, having a better tomorrow. And it's easier said than done, but it starts with right now. And for me, that's just worked so well, being able to rely on my three parts, my three selves, because I can never be failing at all three at once, and that's powerful to know that I'm never a failure. I've always done something good to set me up for where I am now.
Yeah. It's a very interesting way of seeing it. I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been pretty powerful for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an actor. So there are so many times where you want to look down on yourself, you know? So having to find something that will motivate you, it's the dream, it's my dream and it's my dream for a reason. It's already true. I just have to, I don't know how I'm getting there, but I create that. So there's power in that.
Yeah.
What about you, Tess? What motivates you?
Yeah. So I admittedly, because I was actually thinking about being an actor, right? And it must be hard to have motivation for yourself because there's always so many no's, right? There's like 10 more rejections that you have to go through to find the really important yes.
Yes. Yes, it's true.
Yes. But I think, and really reflecting on that, I think I have also gone through not nearly as many, but definitely a few rejections myself. And I've really tried to kind of make that a source of my motivation, that someone says no and that's okay. But that means it's one less thing, it's one less person that I have to please, ironically enough, because you were talking about people pleasing, right? And I almost find this a source of motivation, all right, you said no, so I definitely know that I don't have to serve you, right? I don't have to come back to you because you don't want, my energy, right? And it's funny because I think motivation is energy, and that's our most precious resource in so many ways,
Well
not
said.
only you're right, not only the literal, but also the very metaphysical, right? And it's funny because I was recently on a committee for hiring, and our first question that we asked our candidates was our same first question, actually. Where does your motivation come from? And every single candidate was taken aback. They were like, whoa, I really like this question. So it's funny how, we don't really think about that a lot. And I certainly don't either. I'm much of that, thought bubble, or I guess lack of that thought bubble as anybody else. I don't really think about where my motivation comes from, except, when I feel it, I just know it, right? And now that I'm taking a second to really think about it, I definitely know that, when people have told me no, when I've had that rejection, when I've gone into a fight with a friend, or when I've decided to cut things off from a friend, I become so motivated. I almost thrive off of that negativity and call it anger, right? A friend of mine certainly does tell me to do that, to hone in on my anger and that it is a power. So that might not be as positive as I'd like it to be, but I think it's no less true. Sometimes motivation doesn't come in the prettiest of corners of our lives, but it definitely empowers me still. I recently just went through probably really, a similar, very negative period. I had to decide to cut something away and cut someone away. And then it just motivated me to look at how I treat people, look at how I treat myself. And I treated myself better. I've been doing laundry like nobody's business.
Props to you for that.
I know, right? Not in this humidity. But it's, I've done things where I'm like, no, I'm just going to do it for myself, and I guess that's probably, I don't want to say helpful because it's not like I'm encouraging everyone out there to get into a fight, but I'm definitely encouraging you to not shy away from finding motivation in darker places in life.
Absolutely.
Well, even that, it's almost like trying to find a positive way to channel that anger. If you're going to be angry, don't try to
Don't be an angry
dismiss it.
person.
Right. Don't push it away where you're not processing what's causing that anger. But if you can use that to feel something and then eventually create something positive, I think that's good.
Exactly.
The evolution of your emotional well-being.
Right. Like, it's okay to be angry. Angry is an emotion. But don't let yourself become an angry person.
Yeah.
Shout out to the friend I'm talking about out there. But yeah.
So interesting because you guys have completely different approaches to motivation than I do.
Really? Well, let's hear it. Tell us about yours, fam.
And that's why you're at the table.
I mean, for me, motivation is so hard to come by. If I'm being completely bluntly honest, it's the one thing that I have noticed is that I am best motivated when my environment nurtures that, right? So if my room is a mess and I haven't really done laundry or I haven't really kept up with it, I know that something's wrong emotionally in me where I'm not keep having that upkeep. And then I feel very demotivated to do anything, right? But when my room is clean and everything is so nice, I all of a sudden want to go out and start, going to buy healthier foods or to go to the gym or whatever. But it's so difficult to pinpoint exactly where it comes from. I feel like I come from the group of people where sometimes in order to get into that motivational spot, I almost have to put myself on autopilot. If not, I won't do it. Or it's one of those things where like, just don't think, just do, because if not, I mean, even before when you were saying maybe I don't think about it, and it's like, that's all I think about. I think about how can I be that it person? Like, how can I get to that point? But to find the motivation to do that is so difficult for me. And the only thing that I've noticed in my time here has been to really pay attention to what I'm surrounding myself with, what is my environment. And I find that helps me at least be a little bit more proactive about getting things done, be a little bit more motivated to execute X, Y, Z and stuff like that. 100%. Yeah, very different from you two.
What you say is, I see it though. I definitely see how that shapes up, and although I mentioned, for me, it's the biggest motivator, but I definitely do agree. We are who we surround ourselves with. We are the environment that we live in. All of these are reflections of our own self-image, which is so important because it dictates all of our actions. But I love the idea of like, don't think, just do.
Yeah, sometimes I have to do that.
Yeah, because motivation is not something that we can cultivate. You can't manufacture it. It's something that it's very rare. So you have to do small things that can help heighten it. Like we're talking about this tea, like you're making those choices for yourself because we send signals to ourselves, our bodies and our brains about what we want for them so that they can react to that.
Yeah. And I feel like motivation is something that's just maybe misused, like the word, right? Because for me, motivation has always been sporadic. I've never had any control of it. It comes when it wants to. It's almost what I can equate it to inspiration, right? Like for anybody that's in the art world, it comes, and when it comes, you feel this burst of energy. But then I think what's really important into how to get to that end goal that you want is discipline. And that's where the just do, don't think comes from.
Yes.
Because motivation, like you can feel it and you can use it to like jumpstart, but then you still got to do all the ugly stuff to get there to what it is that you want to do. That's why for me, like the thought of motivation is just like, it sounds beautiful and I wish I could get there. And the thought about past self, future self, present self, I think is really interesting. I'm going to try it out. and see if that helps keep me motivated to keep that discipline in check.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I'd love to check in and see
Yeah.
how it does work for you. Thanks for sharing, ladies, for our first question. Now, our next up is on how we stay motivated.
Which is a great segue as to how you just.
Don't think, just do. So we didn't think, we just did it. Now we have it.
Yeah.
How are we going to stay that way?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's funny because I'm almost kind of reacting to what just Pam shared with us. It's funny because it almost feels like a feeling to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like to me, I think it's more of a reaction, which I guess feelings can be too. They're not exclusive to one another. And which is probably why I don't stay motivated a lot of the times, because to me, it's a reaction to something that happened. And then, it burns out and boom, I'm no longer reacting, right? Or I don't want to react anymore. So it goes away very swiftly. And that's not good. but we're not talking about good, right? We're talking about
Real.
Be real.
Be real.
Yeah.
Oof, man, I hope I get a notification while we're doing the podcast.
But staying motivated is a challenge for sure. It's for me, I don't think I've been able to successfully stay motivated because of, well, one, the nature of where it comes from for me. But if I really wanted to try, right, like with a goal that I have in mind, right, and I wanted to stay motivated about it, I would probably tap into, that kind of idea of, well, what will the me that's, gonna look like in 2 years if I do stay motivated, right? So it's kind of going to like what you were saying for the first part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So I think that's maybe how I stay motivated.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
I look at, what is Tess going to look like in 2 years if she doesn't stay on track, or if she's not, keeping herself on this same path,
Looking out for almost like reminding yourself of your inner child a little bit. Who would you want to be?
Yeah, except I guess it's me. It's me now, right? Because I feel like definitely the inner child wants somebody completely different. And that ain't gonna happen, Sorry. But it's not to say that I failed myself, not at all. I'm not saying that, the inner child is like a child, changes their mind every day. So that's fine. But I feel like in a way, the Tess from 2 years ago, who I am today is going to be her inner child, So
Yes.
there's definitely some truth to that. And, it's not a bad thing to kind of look at yourself like, well, how do I want to take care of myself now? By being that older, wiser, on track person and reach that goal. And I can only look so far ahead. But right now I know that when I react and I become motivated and I'm engaged, I definitely stay on that track because I'm thinking about, well, what am I going to want in 2 years, right? Is this important enough to me that in 2 years I'm going to greatly benefit from it, right? And that's what keeps me motivated.
So interesting because I feel like for me, I don't know if I could look as far as 2 years ahead in terms of looking meticulously at what I'm doing to get the result that I want in 2 years. But then there's a very general picture that I have in my mind when it comes to specific things that I want to be motivated in. And I can picture myself maybe 5 years, 8 years, like what are the big steps that I have to take to get to where I want to be? But when it comes to like very short term, I guess when it comes to non-career goals, non-work and stuff like that, that's where it becomes a little bit a lot difficult for me. And I can't look at 2 years. I find that I naturally reflect on my life every maybe 4 to 6 months. And just and again, it comes from that feeling, right? I start feeling stuck. I start feeling like I'm in a plateau. And then I'm kind of sitting there and thinking, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? Is this something that I can change? And even with motivation, like how to stay motivated, even for things like my health, trying to get to the gym, I find that I can be motivated and I can consistently do something for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then I can't keep up with it anymore. And it's so, like, it's been very difficult for me to try and keep up with something when I have a very specific goal in mind. On the flip side, I think in terms of how I actually am able to stay motivated with some things is I don't look at it so much in terms of goals, but it's more of like, what is a small change I can do today that kind of feels good? That's kind of what I did in Japan when I lived there, and I wanted to start trying out a more plant-based diet. Like, every now and then, one meal, I would just change something out. Or one of the things that's helped a lot too, at least in terms of health and how I stay motivated with that, is what's something that I love and what can I do to make it better for me? So it's not complete removal, and I'm not focusing so much on I have to count all these calories. I have to go and, be working out this specific time to meet this specific goal at this specific date. I find that when I put those restrictions on myself, I automatically fail because I feel like I set myself up for failure in that way because it's so specific.
Right.
Specificity might work for some people, does not work for me at all.
Right.
And so I find that just changing those small things. So instead of soda, what do I like about the soda? I like the feeling of the bubbles in my mouth. Okay, let's try sparkling water. Great, I love it. And that's all I drink now. I used to think if I ever wanted to be in a plant-based diet, I don't miss meat, I don't miss fish, but I love chicken. And then I finally found an alternative to that. And now I can feel like I can have a meal that's all plant-based and not miss the feeling of eating meat.
Yes.
But it's just very small steps that I had to take and kind of sit and reflect and think about, what is it that's working for me right now? What is it that's not working for me? Why is it not working for me? Why is this working for me? And I've come to realize that it's just the smaller things and not beating myself up so much about what the end result is going to be. So it's just really emphasizing on the feeling that I have and what's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Because if I focus too much on the details, I can't do it.
Yeah. One thing I can't forgive you on is deciding to be a vegan when there's literally so much sushi in Japan.
So much.
I will not.
That's very true.
I will not forgive that.
But they also have so much accessibility within their diet. They incorporate a lot of vegetables in their diet that we do not. Mm-hmm. So that makes it easier in a way.
It's so ironic they use tangent, but Pam's, vegetarian friend just came to visit, and he says it's impossible to be. I mean, it's not impossible because he is a vegetarian in Japan, but it's so hard to be a vegetarian in Japan.
Complete. Oh. Yeah, well, because a lot of their
fish stock,
exactly,
milk.
So he's very he's almost vegan.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, if it was a regular vegetarian, they could probably have most of them. But he just has a lot of food sensitivities to that because he's gotten so used to this very typical diet, and so he senses the smallest trace element of meat, dairy.
So he's like the antecedent of your motivation. You have to look at the specifics every day.
Oh, yeah. And Pam doesn't need all that. She doesn't need all that. She only needs specifics for her favorite sweets and her favorite sodas.
You should really thank your biology for not making you allergic like that.
Thank you, ancestors. So for me, I'm definitely going to be speaking predominantly about my career because as an actor, you're constantly, there are workshops on how to stay motivated rather as an artist in our field because we put in so many hours that are unpaid. We spend so much time not only just looking for auditions, but then prepping for the auditions. There's another thing called callbacks, which is a secondary, maybe even a third audition.
Wow.
This past audition season that just ended, I auditioned in person for countless theater companies just here in South Florida and Broward. And I got as many as 4 callbacks for a show that I was not cast in. And so that's tough, when you have things like that where you're so close, you're in a pool of maybe 3 actors and then you don't get the role. You go through everything, all of the thoughts come, and naturally they all come in of, I'm not good enough. Why wasn't I right for this? And in those moments, you always neglect the reality, which is that it is not personal. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with things that are beyond your control, And so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's getting easier for me because I'm just so new to the field. I've been acting for so many years, but it's always been educational. I've always been studying. And so I've been acting professionally for really just like 2 years, but full time for 1 year. And so there's still much for me to learn. And there's still, with the amount of rejection that I've faced and the amount of wins, there's still so much more ahead. And so what I've been needing to do are develop these tools that I can use, that I've decided, my own little toolkit on how to handle it. Because for me, it's important to stay motivated when rejection happens. That's when I have to keep going, because I'm naturally motivated by my passion. I feel so blessed and lucky to have been gifted with, the ability to act, the willpower to do it, the love for public speaking, and that I'm talented, culminate all of that. It's like, it sounds like it should be easy, but it's not, because there are all of these external factors that come in. And so with dealing with rejection, one of my biggest things is I just look for the next thing, and I start looking before I get the rejection. The moment I leave that audition room, I take that feeling, I take that high, or I take the low if I feel like the audition didn't go well. And I immediately go home, I sit on my couch and I look for more castings, because I can't linger on that feeling. I can't put all of my eggs in one basket. I don't think anyone ever should. We talk now, it's 2022, we talk about having multiple streams of income, right? I think the same way about having multiple opportunities, because it's much better to have to decline something than it is to have nothing. And so I'm always looking for the next thing. And another thing that I've started to honor, which has been actually a lot harder to do, it's much easier said than done, is honoring my emotions when I fail, which for me, a failure would be noted as like not getting cast. And so I know, there might be actors listening to the podcast and maybe saying, we get a lot of things, a lot of posts on social media and the workshops and things saying that rejection is not failure. Like not getting cast is not failure. However, I still think that I can't deny my own natural feelings, and it makes me feel like a failure. That's where I'm at right now. So the way that I cope with that is honoring it. It's the only reason why I feel that way is because it means I gave everything to that audition. So when I don't get it, it's like, I'm immediately wondering what I could have done better. Maybe it's always that, like, if it's a self-tape, I had another take. Maybe I should have sent that one in instead. Because it's not like I stopped when I got one perfect one. No, I have like 6 to choose from, So like maybe I sent in the wrong one and all of those things. So instead of thinking and lingering on that, what I try to do now is allow myself to feel the sorrow, just take the rest of that day. And yeah, I'll still look for the castings, I'll still submit, but I allow myself to feel sad that day because.
Or angry.
Or angry. Yes. Or angry. You're very right. That happens as well. Our community is really, really small. And sometimes you wonder why certain things happen. And it's helped a lot because it reminds me that I gave myself the time that I needed. And once again, the only reason why I feel so strongly is because I tried so hard. And I'll never be apologetic about that. I'll never be apologetic about how much I prepare for something. Because again, this is my passion, and there will come a day where I reflect on these moments and be proud of the person that I was for always still going on and for always giving everything that I had in that audition.
Yeah. And you're human, like if you don't allow yourself to feel these feelings, you're not a robot. Eventually you'll start projecting it elsewhere.
100%. I think there's a lot of toxic positivity out there, specifically, for performance artists. I think that the pandemic, when things were halted for a lot of artists, I think that it kind of heightened the idea of toxic positivity within the industry, because now we have this idea of like, you're still an artist if, and then it gives all of the scenarios of things that happen. And as an artist, who consistently works, I agree with all of these things. I just also think that, like, you're an artist and you need to pursue that, because we're all what we do. And if we're not doing it, then you're not that in that moment. I think that we're all, as people, artists. So it's not about it's not about that you went to acting school, so you're an artist. It's about what you're doing with your life in the day to day, because that's what you remember who you were a year ago. And again, a little controversial, but I really think that if an artist is what you do, you also understand that it goes beyond just me being an actor. I'm an artist because I create theater. So that resonates in a lot of different ways. Today I was painting a set, but I'm an artist because I value my art and my craft, and I'll do anything to make sure that it's happening because I'm motivated.
And that's a strong replacement for toxic positivity, I think. Which is natural, because I didn't really even think about that replacement until just now when you mentioned it. It's not about being positive and kind of blind to how you really feel. It's about being motivated past what you feel now. Because, motivated doesn't mean canceling out what you feel. It means keeping it regardless of what you feel. Yes, I'm mad today, right? Or I'm angry, but I'm not going to turn into an angry person. I'm still motivated. I still have a goal. So I'm going to feel this right now, but I'm still on my couch looking through more opportunities.
Yes.
Right. So that's a powerful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for seeing that. I think so too. I mean, it's definitely been helpful, and toxic positivity has definitely always been around.
Yeah.
But again, it's also a definition that's just being thrown around a lot right now. So I think people are extra sensitive to it, and then we don't call it out when we see that it's happening too.
Right.
Because it's no, it's a trigger word. Everyone doesn't want to be known as that, but we can't help the way we are. And I understand that people are always just trying to be helpful. But at the same time, we want to achieve things and get things done. And that comes with some tough truths too, which is that we have to work harder even when we're not there.
Yeah. Motivation doesn't mean happiness. That's a big takeaway.
Happiness should never be the goal.
Right. Yeah. Especially because it's so flippant. I think that's our main takeaway from too, motivation doesn't mean you're always happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a fun one. Next question. The question is, what motivated you for the podcast? I know. And I think no better to start than with Pam, because Pam is really our mediator right here, brought the three of us together.
I know, I did. So honestly, this podcast came from when I used to tutor. And when we would tutor, sometimes we'd have downtime where we weren't seeing students, and we would always have the best time talking about a variety of different topics in a space where everyone was very open and nobody took things personally. Everyone understood it was just to try and explore the topic even more. And I hate small talk. I hate when people ask me about the weather or all these things that are not really that important. And so this intellectual stimulation was something that was new to me, because I didn't really have that with my original group of friends. And this was kind of a fresh take, right? Because I feel with friends, sometimes people get scared to say some things a little strongly, and you still want everybody to be on a good page. And so because I think this was a workplace, it was automatically understood as we're keeping things civil. No one's going to take things personally. And I think that was a huge advantage to that environment. But I just loved it, and I really wanted it. And then I became really close friends with Tess through work. And I was telling her about it, and I was like, we need to make a podcast about this. I feel what we talk about is super interesting. I feel a lot of people would find it very helpful, or could find it helpful.
Absolutely.
And also, I've just always been drawn to this world. And by this world, I mean the world of YouTube, the world of being an influencer and things like that. And it's a little bit different because I've been very careful about how I would want to do that.
Yes.
Because I understand the sacrifice it takes to live in that world. And because I really honor and value my privacy, I didn't really go for those specific routes because I'm just not that kind of person. It takes a very strong person to be able to do and put yourself out there,
Yes.
in that kind of light. And I
Absolutely.
figured podcasting is a great way where it's a different audience. Each platform has their audience and their stereotypes of those audiences. And so podcasting seemed like a more, as far as I know, I'm very surface level with podcasting knowledge, but it seemed like a good place to start, and the topics that we would talk about would be things that I think would attract the right audience as well and the right groups of people. So the major thing that motivated me specifically to actually get it done is because we were trying to do this, Tess and I, for about a year and a half or so. And we talked about it, and nothing ever really happened. And then one day I find myself having lunch with Miss Caitlin, and she kind of accidentally invites herself to be a part of the podcast. But I went with it and I said, you know what? This would be great. It was meant to be. Nothing is an accident. Yeah, it was meant to be. And I was like, this would be awesome. I hope Tess is okay with this because it's too late. I've already said yes.
And for the record, that is what I said too. I said, if Tess is down.
Yeah.
Wow. Obviously, we know Tess was not down. No, I'm just kidding.
That's why we sit on opposite sides of the table. No. I'll love here.
Yeah. But
no, so of course I said yes. I was like, oh my God, it's a brilliant idea. Because she speaks so well.
And
on stage,
also
maybe.
Having a third person, because at least with like Tess and I, we were so comfortable with each other. And I was like, yeah, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. But with a third person where it's like, okay, Tess doesn't really know Caitlin too well. She might feel more like, oh no, Caitlin might be expecting a certain level of, And then with you joining, I was like, okay, well now I have to make sure that it's good because Caitlin's going to be in here. So, now it has to be a real thing because I promised her this one thing and now I can't show up with nothing. Wow. So you're a really great motivator.
I held the power, huh?
You did.
That's crazy.
Little do we know that we came today and we had nothing. This was exactly why Kate is right now leading the conversation.
I can't.
Oh no.
Hey, happy to be here. And I've never really viewed myself in a leadership position. This is one of the only times I can. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing. At least for this episode, because y'all will be leading others in the future. So get ready. I'm taking one for the team here. So for me, what motivated me for the podcast is, again, guys, I think what's tough for me is that as an actor, as a child actor, as someone who has been studying it as long as I could since 6th grade, you lose who you are. You can. Not everyone does. But it's really easy to lose who you are because you get so lost in all of these characters and then you kind of start waiting for your next opportunity to be someone else, that you can find moments where you are at a loss for words of who you are. People ask you, oh, what do? You say you act, and they say, oh, well, what else do you do? And all of a sudden you're at a blank and you don't have an answer. And that's happened to me all too many times, particularly in the theater, where it's like, well, it's obvious that I'm an actor. That's why I'm here, but who am I aside from that? What else fuels me in this world and in this life? And so what was exciting for me about the podcast and why I was so immediately drawn to it was because here's an opportunity for me to be who I am, and we always discover, I love writing. I love writing about myself and being able to reflect on it later so I can recognize who I was, because it's so hard to see who you are in the moment. That takes a lot of inner work and going through the motions to know who you are in the moment. And so having the podcast is just another beautiful record of who I am right now in my life, because as Pam said, we can't see too far into the future, but I'll always remember that at this time in my life, this was one of the most special things that I was working on, and my goal is that it continues to be that way because it's what motivates me, is that I have this really beautiful, special project that is curated by 3 lovely women who have nothing but passion for sharing, the things that we've learned to help make it easier for you all who are listening, or to help you find yourself through us too. And and I know Tess understands this, being called to tell stories is not an easy task. And so when you're called to tell your own story, it can be really jarring and scary. And that's kind of how you know you need to do it, because you know that it means that there are going to be people who understand you and have been there. And now you're immediately kind of creating future conversations with people. And that might be the first time that I have to have these conversations, because it's the first time that I'm saying some of these things and revealing some vulnerable truths. But it's kind of why I'm here. It feels like my purpose on this planet. Mm-hmm. And so the podcast just feels right. It just feels like I'm finally at the point in my life and it's time to share. I've been receiving and receiving and receiving for so long, and I think I'm finally ready to share what I have now.
Yeah, I just want to add on to mine. Once you said purpose, like that was something else that really motivated me too, because I felt like, I knew career-wise, I would end up finding a job and all this stuff. I was raised to be very disciplined and have a very hard work ethic, so that wouldn't be a big deal. But every job, it's like, I want something more. I want to contribute to this world somehow. I want to make a difference no matter how small it might seem. And this was always something that kept floating around in my head. And looking into this world of podcasting, even like motivational speakers, right? Or those people who are, what are they called? Like life coaches.
Mm-hmm,
like why? Yeah, like, there's a place for those people in this world.
Oh, yes.
And these are things that I genuinely care about and would love to have and talk to, with a lot of other people. I already have conversations with a lot of these topics with my friends. Like, why can't this be more of a public place where I could do this and spread it to more people? So yeah, just want a little amendment to mine.
Right. Which now it comes down to me.
Yeah.
We have arrived.
I know, we have arrived. Final stop. Well, what motivates me to record a podcast? I think my answer starts with one, echoing, what Pam had said on a day-to-day. For sure, it's about, and really, it's kind of evolved because I don't want to be that person that is just comfortable with my close friends. I realized that. I think I realized that quite recently too. Like, I don't just want to be Pam's close friend and then not meet Pam where we want to be, because that's something I think that, a lot of us are guilty of, right? We get comfortable with people and we kind of, treat them as if like, yeah, we're saying this out loud, but we'll be around each other. So we're really not in a hurry or in a rush, or we're not going to really actually keep to it because we feel like we have all the time in the world, but we really don't. Not saying that anything fatal is going to happen, but anything can happen, right? So you don't have all the time in the world, which is something that I feel like we've iterated before. You have now, we have today, we have this hour and some, and I do want to meet my close friends where we want to be. I don't want to be comfortable and sit there anymore. And like I said, that's something that has come up quite recently. But besides the day-to-day, what motivates me to complete this podcast on a long range is that I feel very intrinsically connected to being a storyteller. I think that when you have a moment and you sit down and you listen, that's valuable. And when you have a moment and you sit down and share, that's even more valuable. Like both sides of that interaction of storytelling are incredibly important. So you on the other side are very important, right? Yeah. And we're, I don't want to say doing a service, but definitely engaging in this exchange so that you turn around this listener, right? And say, I can do the same thing with somebody I love, with somebody I don't know, right? I now have the platform or motivation, dare I say, to turn around and tell the same story to somebody who may need to hear it, right? Because storytelling is important, and we don't really know that unless we engage with it. Like Pam said, I was a part-time tutor for a long time, and my job was reading people's stories. And I don't think those students actually know how much they impacted me. I don't think I knew what I was going to receive, like what you're saying, receiving so much. I really did not know. And I have thankfully moved up since then, but I will never, ever, ever forget my time reading students writing, students who hated writing, students who loved writing, students who didn't think what they wrote was important, students who absolutely stressed about every single word. Like both spectrums, it was a lot of receiving. Like you're saying, Kat, it was a lot of receiving. And I think that motivated me to create something that was, sharing. And I don't want to say of the same importance, but definitely of the same, initiation, so that you, someone out there, can turn around and feel the same initiation to speak your mind, say what's in your mind right now, and turn around into that friend group and be like, you know what, Pam went through that same experience and she found this helpful. So I'm going to break a little bit of that comfort that we have in our friend group. And I'm going to say something challenging, and I want my friends to respect me and hate me for it. Right. Which you did. And you completely turned around, your friend group in ways that I don't think they, really know, or, vice versa. Right. There's a lot of things that trigger when you all of a sudden decide to stop and change the day-to-day. And I think that's what this podcast does. It stops and it changes this day that maybe would have been me just at home thinking these things is now out loud.
Concrete.
Yeah. And it helps because it validates everything, right? Someone feels validated in that they can relate to somebody else who has had the same experience, or even the same emotion. And at the end of the day, as humans, I feel like that's all we're really looking for, to help feel included and feel like we are important enough in this world. So, yeah, I agree with all of that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to anyone listening to our podcast, that's exactly how we view all of you. You help to remind us that we belong here and that the things that we have to say are worth sharing. So thank you, friends, for being here. And on that, our last question we created specifically for you because, we've been talking all day. We've kind of shared the good, the bad, and the ugly about our feelings towards motivation. As Pam said, it's a loaded word and oftentimes misused by the people in our culture. So that being said, our last question is motivation. You have it. Now what? Fun. So I'm going to take the lead on this one and say, for me, what I would encourage for you all to do, if in this episode, something is already sparked, for you of something that you want to get started on and you want to tackle this year or before the year is over or with the new year, is to just start with one thing. I do believe in creating goals for yourselves. I personally like to create, I think I mentioned this in our first podcast, creating 1, 3, and 5 year goals. You can be as simple or as specific as you'd like, but I think it's always nice to do, and they can change. Your goals can change when you do it. Like Pam says, she likes to check in every 4 to 6 months. They can be different at that time. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your plan. But I think that you need to just start with something, just one thing that's going to help get you to your goal. And do that every day, because it can be something as simple as, Pam mentioned, having an untidy room will, decrease her motivation for something because she feels like she can't give the time to it until that's done. So then start there. Even though it doesn't seem like it's directly tied to your goal, and Tess has mentioned this as well, you never know what will lead you. It's about the dream career. So if you want to get to the dream career, what's the tiny little thing you can do today that's going to help you get there? Because if you can't start until, right? Well, what's the until? Let's take care of the until first, because you want to be a good person once you get there. You want to earn your way, right? We all do. None of us want it to just be handed to us easy. We've been shown too many horror stories that happen that way, and they never end well. So I think part of the process is taking that one thing. You want to start going to the gym? Let's start with drinking enough water. Make sure you're drinking enough water each day so that once you get to that gym, you can maintain an exercise.
Or get a good number of rest, sleep hours.
And recovery.
Yep.
And, my boyfriend, he actually shared something really cool with me, which was of a person who, wanted to start this weight loss journey, had never stepped inside of a gym before. And so for, I think it was 2, maybe 3 months, every morning, the person got up, got ready, and went to the gym and did nothing. Because what they were doing was developing the habit of showing up.
Wow.
So they consistently went to the gym and did nothing at the gym. Just went to the gym, worked out for 5 minutes of whatever it was, right? But couldn't really accomplish much in 5 minutes. But then from that point on, they were able to incrementally, because, hey, 3 months of going somewhere every single day, you've changed your life.
Yeah.
You've added something
Developed
new.
a habit, right? 21 days or something.
Yeah. I know this guy didn't believe that statistic. He took it even further. But yeah, I stand by that. I think there's a lot of value in that. You have to start somewhere, so just pick something. Don't think, just do.
Yep.
What about you, Miss Tess?
I'm going to say 2 things. 2 sweet and simple things.
We got time for it. We got time for anything.
Yeah. 1, respect the decision, no matter what it is. I am someone who has caught myself disrespecting my own decisions, whether it be don't do this anymore, don't talk to this person anymore, or my decision to do, like Pam had said, my decision to want to do something with Pam and not do it. That's disrespecting a decision, right? The do's and the don'ts. Disrespecting that just continues, right? The dead ends. Nothing happened, right? Or you went back to the very person that you didn't want to talk to anymore, and guess what? They did the same thing. Respect when you decide, respect your feelings when certain people are making you feel certain ways, because let me tell you, my source of motivation was definitely my, rejections, my anger. And when that faded and I decided, you know what, let's just forgive them. It's okay. It won't happen again. It did. It did. It happened again and again and again. So when you respect your motivation, when you respect your cross threshold, and you stand there and become your own, protection of do not cross this threshold, that's when you'll start not only feeling motivated, but actually stay motivated and feel the payoff of, guess what? I no longer feel trampled on because I stayed at my threshold. No one else crossed me. And, I don't care about what others respect. I respected myself. So number 1, respect your decisions. And definitely number 2, don't get sidetracked as to what other people, I don't want to say something generic like think of you or like that. People are allowed to think whatever they want. And guess what? In 2 minutes, it'll change. So don't get sidetracked as to what people think about your goals or who you want to be or what you are. They think your top is terrible, and 2 minutes later, they're concerned about, missing their car keys, right? It really doesn't change or affect what your motivation leads up to. That's just a blimp, right? Of a moment, of a day, of a week. And it doesn't help you reach further if you stop at this little blimp and then just focus on what that other person said. Just let it be a blimp. Just let people think. I mean, okay, thank you for your feedback.
Well, and it also helps, I think, if I may, to say that we know that when someone does something like that, they're only reflecting their image of themselves. They're reflecting
Very
it
true.
with their words.
Yeah. And I should have said that, and I guess it's because that message has been so strong for me in my early 20s, but I feel like I completely forgot it by now. Well,
It's
not
just
forgot
in you.
it, but it just became so innate. So yes, absolutely, that's so true. 9 out of 10 times what people tell you is just their own image of themselves and not anything to do with you.
Right. For mine, well, I had two, and now you reminded me of a third. So I'm gonna go backwards here to add on to your thing of don't listen to other people. This might be, again, a very weird and very niche group, may not apply to all. One of the things that I've learned is things that you're very serious about changing or wanting to make a huge change, don't tell anybody. Because at least for me, the second that I tell somebody, like let's say I'll tell Tess, oh my God, okay, so this year I am gonna move out. That's it. It's gonna be this year. And then if it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't start happening in the time frame that I'm imagining in my head, immediately my mind thinks failure. Like this one person knows, now I'm never gonna be able to do it because I had said that I was gonna do it at this time and blah, blah, blah. Like things can change. So if there are very specific goals that you are very serious about, maybe take some time and just keep it to yourself. And maybe as like your little secret, like, oh, no one's going to know. But then when they find out, like wait till they find out, or try and spin it in a way, like whatever it is that you need for it to stick. Let's say you want to stay plant-based, but you're worried about the judgment people are going to give you. Okay, so then twist it on its head and be like, no, this is a privilege for me to be able to decide to not have this and that. And you're impeding on my boundaries that I'm setting for myself. And then the other thing is, this is something that I used to do. I have not gotten into the habit of doing, and I need to start getting into again. But this actually comes, bless you. This comes from a podcast that I listen to that's called The Daily Boost. And it's these very short, it's a great podcast. He's been doing this for years. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot his name. I think it's Scott. And he has these very short motivational podcast shows. I listen to it. I used to listen to it every morning. Scott Smith, yes. I used to listen to it every morning, and it was such a great way to start my day. But one of the things that he said in one of his episodes was do 3 things, which is now what I see a lot of in agendas as well. Like your top 3. What is your big goal? What are the tiny steps that you can do to get there? And what are the top 3 things that you think you're prioritizing to be able to get there? Because it's going to be impossible. There'll be days where you cannot do 5 things. You can at least do 3 things. And they can be 3 simple things, right? It can be drink water. It can be put gym clothes on. It could be get in the car. Maybe you don't make it to the gym yet, but you've at least done those 3 things. And those are steps that are hard to do because it's all in the mind, right? But at least you've done them, and that's something that you've accomplished.
I like that.
And then, because sometimes
once you're sitting inside of the car,
you're like, I might as well.
Yeah.
And then
it's really good.
Something for me that I also used to do, specifically with bullet journaling. I think bullet journaling has really helped keep my life very organized, very motivated. I looked forward to creating my own agenda every time, but I am someone who loves to plan and draw and all of that stuff. But one of the things that I would do that I love and I think would benefit a lot of people is that when it comes time to starting the new year or starting that new month, think of a word. So when I came back from Japan, I actually started this because I came back from Japan, is I picked a word for the year that would be my theme and what I would focus on. So in that way, I still had a goal, but it was generic enough and flexible enough for me to be able to adapt to it as needed, right? So when I came back from Japan, my word for the year was routine, because I was coming back from a different culture, experiencing reverse culture shock. I needed a routine set up to feel normal and to reintegrate myself into Miami. The next year after that, I think it was, I don't know, some different word. Like first it was routine and now it was exploration or something like that. I've gotten my roots down, but I feel like there's some parts of Miami I don't know, and I'm going to go out and explore and maybe discover new things about myself. So yeah, a word for the year, or if you're very fast, maybe a word for the month that you're setting up or that you're planning for, like the first half of the year, second half of the year, just a theme to what almost like what people do now with mood boards, or what are they called? Vision boards. And so that's your vision for the year. And so just put a word to that, like a theme. And that's what's helped me.
I kind of do that a little bit too. I do it with colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to choose kind of a color. It usually spurs in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's my like solar rotation. But yeah, I usually end up choosing a color because it resonates with a feeling or a different span of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. That's cool.
Just
Same
a
idea.
word in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just I think what's kind of sparking me also with like Pam's her first kind of response to motivation is here now what. Don't tell anyone, I think is it's kind of a thing that's hard for us because we're so proud, or we're so excited, right? We're so excited. Oh my God, I'm gonna do it, right? Because you were excited to make this proclamation. You were excited to start this change. And I think that the only thing that I would say is that it's not a secret as much as commitment to yourself. It instead turns into, it's not a commitment to a word, something you said to somebody else, because then that's putting the importance on the else, right?
Right.
Whereas, no, I've spoken it to myself, that's enough. It's a commitment to me. So that's what makes it important, right? I did that, and partially I failed because I did announce I wanted a new job. I made that announcement, right, to myself, to people, like I want a new job. And it wasn't even a timeline. It wasn't even I'm going to leave this by next year. It was just I want a new job. And I did the work, right? I did the kind of the work to myself, right? I just showed up to myself. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing, but it happened, right?
Yeah.
And that's what was important, right?
Yeah. I think just to clarify, like vocalizing specific details about your goal to somebody is where the failure comes from, because then you feel like, well, that was my verbal contract. I can't back out of it now. And if I don't meet it, it's automatic failure. But at least declaring an intention, I think, is okay. And then just keeping the details of how and when and where to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see that I'm writing it down now because I feel like this kind of almost spurs another podcast topic idea, and let us know if that's something you guys would like to hear more about, because it really just brings about the idea of accountability.
Yeah.
And what's our relationship to that? Because we are all different styles. We all have different personality styles. And so it responds to that differently, because some of us are more so, we do function best independently. That's when we can be the most productive. And I think those are the people who are really resonating with what you're saying, Pam. Because there are other people who really work best on a team, and need to share everything that's going on. And they are productive that way too.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody. So I think it'd be a cool topic. Let us know again if you'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah.
So my friends, this wraps up our topic for today, all about motivation. I hope you've enjoyed or been inspired, maybe feel a little bit motivated to move into a better direction for your life. I know I've learned some things as well.
Me too.
From both of you. So
Me
thank
too.
you. I honor you. And I'm grateful to be here in this space with you all. Now, traditionally, we have been trying to end every episode with a tarot reading. But today, I think today was really about mastering the art of showing up. And so we're going to forego our tarot reading tonight. We want to make sure that we're in the right headspace for that, since it is a sacred practice. And you can look forward to a tarot reading at our next episode. We'll make that claim now that we'll have that ready for you all. And my friends, it's been a pleasure tonight. Any last words from you, Tess?
Good night and be gentle, or good morning and be gentle. Yeah.
And Pam?
Just don't stress it. It'll happen.
Oh, and it's okay to be angry, but still be gentle.
That's right, because it's about what you do with it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, my friends, be well. Go out into this week feeling like you have the motivation. Now figure out what you're going to do with it. And until next time, have a good one. Cheers.
Cheers.